morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We're here to talk about everyone's favorite subject, crypto, which I'm sure is even more true now that Bitcoin is at 56,000, 57,000. I haven't checked again this morning. The market cap just crossed 2 trillion for the first time in 2 years. I'm not saying this as a celebratory thing. I am a neutral journalist here, so no applause, please. But we have two great operators here who can talk about what's happening with crypto markets, because I think it's really difficult to understand how prices are rebounding so much when there is still so much uncertainty with what's happening with global regulation and obviously all the trials that are ongoing. So I want to start off, Gracy, maybe with you. Do you have any idea why prices are rebounding so much? What's behind this latest market explosion?
That's a good question. I want to know as well. I think for this morning, it really came up a lot, surprisingly. But for the past few months, the reason is quite obvious, mainly two. Number one, SEC approved the spot ETF of Bitcoin in January 10th. And that means lots of institutional money, as of retail investors can invest in crypto directly through ETF. So lots of traditional financial investors who are allocating maybe 1%, 5% of their portfolio are looking into crypto. So I think that's one of the reasons. The second one is probably very much related to the macroeconomics. For example, the expectation in terms of the US Federal Reserve are going to cut the interest rate. And that drives not just crypto, but also all the sort of like risky assets, including equity, etc. So I think that's the two main reasons. And then we're seeing Bitcoin halving in maybe April, and then Cancun upgrade in Ethereum during March. So right now, you probably know like East Denver, that's another event. By the way, I'm flying to East Denver tomorrow, right? Directly from here. So very FOMO, like I need to be in every event so that we can, get to really know the projects, know what's happening in the space. Yeah, but I think Ethereum ecosystem upgrade, Bitcoin halving are two other reasons.
Sylvia, do you agree with that?
Yeah. Of course I agree. And I will add that it's becoming absolutely clear that the blockchain train has left the station. There is no way back. And also because crypto, it's an easy step into the investment market. For example, for women in countries like Mexico, 53% of the crypto holders are women, and women take crypto as the second asset class after cash. So more and more people are getting into investments through crypto, and trust is building up because they saw Bitcoin dying 500 times and always coming back, and because it has the mood of the market.
It does seem like a lot of the current explosion in prices is being driven by institutional investors. Gracy, as you mentioned, you have the approval of the Bitcoin ETFs, so now you can have accredited investors, asset managers moving into crypto. It doesn't seem like everyday retail investors are really moving back in yet. I'm curious, and I know that you work for an exchange, if you think that trend is changing, if you think you're going to start seeing the entrance of retail traders like how the last bull run was powered.
Yeah, we do see lots of newcomers from retail users as well as institutional users, especially through ETFs. So BlackRock is one of the largest asset management firms around the world, and right now I think they take about 80 to 90% of the ETF market in the US market. But from an exchange point of view, I think Way and ETFs, we are sort of like serving different customers. So we don't really see lots of decrease from the exchange volume per se, especially actually we see some increase, given that there are still lots of users who are not just interested in Bitcoin, but many other altcoins that they don't have ETF tools that it might be easier for them to just buy them in exchanges. But you're right, there is a shift of players. Rather than shift, I think a more accurate word might be a new subset that we're looking at, which is like the TradFi users.
Sylvia, what do you think? And I know that Unicoin is working on a product that ideally will be to retail investors, not just accredited investors. Do you think that retail is going to flow back in with this new, I don't know if it's a bull market yet, but this new cycle that we're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. And we target retail investors internationally because we are a security with SEC-regulated and asset-backed and only accredited investors in the US. So we are doing a S1 filing. But we see a significant interest in regular people, like retail investors to get into crypto, especially more and more that regulation is evolving and that they can feel there is a safety net to protect investors in general.
I'm curious, I think the last couple years in crypto obviously have been defined by rife fraud and a lot of high-profile trials like Sam Bankman-Fried. I think a lot of people lost money investing at the top of cycles in 2021. So what do you think the message should be for everyday traders or even VCs who got in the last cycle who may have now regretted their decision? What do you think the message is about where the crypto industry is currently and where Web3 is headed?
Mm-hmm. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even if I'm very deeply involved in the industry, I don't put all my assets in crypto, and I make sure I safeguard my assets, like crypto assets, tokens, etc., in safe places. For example, the biggest exchanges that I'm comfortable with. Obviously, I'm comfortable with my own company, so lots of tokens in my own exchange, while some are in hardware wallets, where you want to make sure that no one can touch it other than myself. And I guess another thing is we need to know in the crypto world, the most important thing is understanding the cycle. So if you don't know about the cycle, whatever you do, if, for example, you are a founder in the space, without knowing the cycle and understand like what's the bigger picture that we are seeing, it's actually rather effortless, whatever you do. So I think understanding the cycle is very important. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
I will second Grace on this. Diversification is key. Never invest more than what you are willing to lose as well. But also think of different vehicles. Like in our case with Unicoin, we took a completely different approach to crypto. We went the regulatory way. We went to address the issues related to traditional cryptocurrencies, like the high volatility, backing Unicoin with assets, and starting with a diversified portfolio of equity stakes in high-growth company potentials, companies that can become unicorns. And then when the market for tech went down, shifting to doing asset swaps with real estate. So by now we have $1.5 billion in real estate assets backing the regulated, transparent coin that we built under SEC regulation. So there are other products that are not so volatile. So my suggestion, agreeing with Grace, is to diversify, not put all the eggs in one basket, but also see that there are many different products on the crypto economy, from the ETF to altcoins, stable coins, and different financial products that are anchored on crypto that are very good, interesting investment as well.
What trends do you think we're going to see in this coming cycle? I think if you look at 2021, maybe it was defined by NFTs and the rise of layer 2s. Right now we're seeing obviously Bitcoin be ascendant, layer 1s are popping up again. What do you think is going to happen now that was different in 2021?
I personally look at, some people call 2023 as GameFi summer. As a avid investor in this space, I do think I see lots of shift of gaming sector in terms of previously, for example, Axel Infinity, that's very popular in Philippines. Lots of people are just playing the game in order to earn. So we call it play to earn model. Right now I see a shift from play to earn to play and earn. That means it's more and more important to build a game that is really funded by people which people really want to play, rather than I'm just playing for earning. So I think that's a great trend we're seeing. I have invested in a few projects in the space, a few funds as well, that they are incubating, for example, the Web 2 gaming startups or founders to include NFT, tokenomics, etc., for them to build a Web3 project. That makes sense. Yeah, so I think gaming is one sector that is still very much needed by us in the industry, because lots of retail users get to play game to understand what is blockchain, rather than just hearing us sharing all these big words that they probably don't understand. So I think gaming is one sector. Another sector that I'm studying right now is called Decrypting. So those are the real-world assets or real-world use cases. For example, Helium Mobile. It's a very popular project recently. They just launched a mobile token, I think, in January, growing pretty well. So Decrypting is another sector that I think can have huge potential in 2024.
Yes, and agree with that. I think that we are going back to the traditional barter economy, or the tokenization of real-world assets of all kinds. I believe that anything that has value can be tokenized. We incursion in the tech stock, equity stakes in companies, real estate, but we are tokenizing art as an asset class, and considering carbon credits. So this, I believe, will be a very, very big thing for this year, but also the regulated coins. I think that by now, crypto is like in the second generation wave, like similar to what had happened in the very early .com days, where the bubble burst, and then we have the altavistas that then turn to be succeeded by Google, so MySpace by Facebook, Meta, TikTok, Snap. Now it's like the time for the second generation coins with better business models, with more transparency, accountability, and in many cases with strong assets that are helping them to address, to hedge the volatility, to address the risks as well.
So when you talk about regulation, and I know Unicoin is approaching an SEC-regulated model, so going through the front door with the main securities regulator in the US. At the same time, there's clearly a huge regulatory block in the US. Obviously, a lot of the major companies are currently in litigation with the regulators, and it does seem like there's a push of crypto out of the US and more into other global regions, especially when there's applications that make sense, like cross-border payments or tokenization of real-world assets that maybe don't make as much sense in the US. So I'm curious, especially that we're here in Qatar and the Middle East, where there is a lot of investment happening in crypto. Do you see a trend outside of the US pushing to other global regions? And if so, where do you think that's happening, where crypto is going to expand during this cycle? Gracie?
Yeah. Sure. Well, the other day I was chatting with a few influencers in crypto, and they came up with this word, which I just want to share. So what it says is Asia rising, West falling. I find it quite interesting. I don't know if I fully agree with that or not, but I think lots of Asian hubs are coming up, especially Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, in Middle East, and what else? Maybe Southeast Asia and South Asia. According to chain analysis, I think still about 30 to 40% of the on-chain data transactions are happening in all these regions, like in Asia, including Southeast Asia and South Asia. So there are lots of users. And then if you look at the project founders, for example, China and India are famous for having relatively cheap but very well-educated programmers, coders, who are very much needed in this space in order to build some great projects. So it makes sense that there are users, there are founders, there are coders, and there are also money in terms of investment, and quite clear regulatory framework, for example, in especially Hong Kong and Singapore and Dubai. So I'm seeing some shifts to Asia in terms of all these regions.
Yeah, same thing. It's becoming a global village, like Marshall McLuhan has said also in the fintech Web3 area. In the case of Qatar, we are working with the Digital Assets Lab, and in the case of Dubai, with VARA. So there are very interesting regulatory frameworks and government support, and government officials who are willing and open to work with innovators, which I think is the best scenario, because by now we entrepreneurs have learned the wrong way that there is nowhere to hide. Like regulation is going to be something that will happen. So it's much better to work closely to make sure that when we are working with regulators, they have all the information that they need and that we create jointly a framework that works for everyone and that promotes innovation. But I see that, and even like in very countries like my own country in Argentina, now with a new administration, there is like a lot of hope that what was happening in the B or the not so official economy, that people were using crypto because they were looking for anonymity. Now it's going to be formalized and hopefully addressed in a way that will create a much more inclusive and transparent financial ecosystem. Because crypto can do both things. It can lead to obscurity and anonymity, but it can also bring a lot of transparency as well. So I think that it's a great opportunity for democratization for emerging markets as well.
So one last very quick question. Is there a project right now that you see in the Web3 space that's not your own that you're particularly excited about?
I mentioned a few in gaming and depend, but no financial advice. There are a few, I think, in terms of secondary market that you can purchase. I guess Ronin, Shrapnel. These are some gaming projects, and then in depend, mobile. We talked about it, and also. What's the other one I was looking at? It's called Demo. Yeah, so these are some projects. I actually invited both Helium co-founder and Demo co-founder to my alma mater, which is MIT, to give a talk and share it with the Harvard and MIT community students like a few weeks ago. So I get to know them much deeper. Again, no financial advice, but feel free to take a look
at
those
disclaimers of the case.
Yeah, the disclaimers are important. Put it here. Yeah, but take a look at those projects and really get to know their business model. I think that would be very valuable.
Well, I will take note of that. I have an investment show called Unicorn Hunters where people can click to invest in companies with unicorn potential, and we are starting to partner and scout companies on the Web3 ecosystem. So more than saying my favorites, I will take your notes on who should be nominated for the show.
By the way, I'm also judge for another show. It's called Killer Whales. So it's a crypto version of Shark Tank, and that's going to be featured on Apple TV in March. So take a look at that.
Oh, can't
you
wait.
know, I'll follow.
So unfortunately, we're out of time. Could talk about this all day, but thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for being on the panel today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.